The torches flickered along the marble corridors of the imperial palace. Every flame trembled as if the walls themselves were afraid. In the deepest hour of night, a young Roman emperor paced barefoot across the polished floor, his eyes darting at every little sound. He had ordered his guards to stay far away. He trusted no one. A servant whispered that even his own shadow frightened him. And tonight, something had pushed him past the edge. The emperor believed death was coming, not from an assassin, not from an enemy army, but from something he was sure lived inside his own palace. He clutched a dagger, muttering that someone, somewhere, was waiting in the darkness. This is the story of an emperor consumed by fear, a ruler whose paranoia reshaped Rome, and a secret so disturbing it was erased from the records for years. Rome produced many strange emperors, some cruel, some eccentric, some outright mad, but few lived a life driven by terror the way this one did. His reign is short, but the consequences are deep. He trusted almost no one. He punished people for standing too close. He banned mirrors in the palace. He dismissed the Praetorian Guard because he thought they could hear his heartbeat. And behind all this fear was one hidden truth, something he tried to bury, something that followed him from childhood into the imperial throne. Tonight, we step inside the mind of an emperor who ruled the greatest empire in the world, while being haunted by something he never fully escaped. Before he ever held power, before he ever sat on Rome's golden throne, he was a frightened boy growing up in a palace that looked calm from the outside but rotted with tension inside. His father was a respected general. His mother came from a powerful aristocratic family. Their home was filled with marble statues, tutors, soldiers, and servants. But behind the luxury, there was pressure. Every word was watched. Every mistake was punished. Children in noble Roman households weren't encouraged to express fear. They were expected to be miniature adults. He struggled with this. Records describe him as a quiet, anxious child. Tutors said he showed signs of something unusual even at a young age. He slept with a lamp burning beside his bed because he feared the dark. He jumped whenever a servant opened a door too quickly. Loud voices made him nervous. Sudden touches left him startled. Rome did not care for frightened children, especially not ones meant for greatness. His father believed fear was weakness. He tried to train it out of him. He brought him to military drills. He made him watch soldiers fight. He forced him to sit through speeches about discipline, but none of it worked. The boy remained tense, always expecting danger, always watching the shadows. When he was 9, something happened that shaped him forever. A man tried to kill his father during a military meeting. The boy witnessed the attack. He saw the blade. He heard the shouts. The man was killed immediately, but the damage was done. That night, he told a servant he would never feel safe again. From then on, he refused to walk through the palace alone. He insisted on sleeping with 2 lamps. He never turned his back on a doorway. The palace physicians wrote reports about severe night terrors and imaginative visions of danger. But he grew up. And like all Roman boys, he learned to hide his fear behind silence. What no one expected was that the frightened child would one day sit on the throne of the most powerful empire on earth, and that his old fears would follow him there. This emperor didn't come from a direct line to the throne. Rome was unpredictable. Emperors died suddenly. Succession changed often. Political winds shifted with every assassination, scandal, or military victory. He rose to power not because he was charismatic or dominant, but because Rome was running out of options. The previous emperor died without a clear heir. The Senate scrambled to find stability. Generals pushed their own candidates. The Praetorian Guard whispered promises of loyalty to anyone who could reward them. And in the middle of this chaos stood our frightened young nobleman, who by now was a grown man trying desperately to seem strong. To everyone's surprise, he became the compromise candidate. He wasn't too powerful, so the Senate wasn't threatened. He wasn't too popular with the army, so rival generals didn't fear him. He wasn't ambitious, so no one thought he would destroy the balance of power. He was the safest choice. Or so they thought. When he was crowned as emperor, the people expected a quiet ruler, someone who would avoid conflict and simply maintain order. But the moment he entered the palace as emperor, something inside him changed. Or rather, something old came back. The boy who feared the dark never left, and now, he had absolute power. The first signs appeared within weeks. He dismissed several household servants without explanation. He claimed he did not like the way they breathed. He banned anyone from approaching him from behind. He ordered all doors in the palace to be opened loudly so he could hear them. Soon after, he removed many of his father's old friends from positions of influence. He didn't accuse them of treason. He didn't need to. He just said their presence felt unsafe. He forced musicians to stop playing certain instruments because their sharp sound startled him. He once shouted at a senator because the man's robe brushed against the floor too loudly. The palace grew quiet. People walked slowly. Servants whispered. Guards were told not to make eye contact with him unless spoken to. Then came the mirror incident. One afternoon, he saw his own reflection in a bronze mirror and panicked. He told the court physicians he saw someone watching him through it, someone he didn't trust. He banned mirrors entirely from the palace. All metal that could reflect was removed. Even polished surfaces were dulled. The court was beginning to worry. Then his paranoia grew darker. He claimed to hear footsteps at night. He accused shadows of moving. He believed the statues in the palace were watching him. He said, a reflection in a goblet smiled at him without his face moving. At first, the court assumed he was exhausted. They encouraged rest, meditation, prayers. But rest did not help. His paranoia took on a shape, and eventually a name. He began talking about the other one. He said there was someone who looked exactly like him, hiding somewhere in Rome. A double copy, someone waiting to replace him. Whether this was delusion or trauma resurfacing, no one knows. But he was convinced. And he took drastic measures to protect himself. He created a new system of guards who had to change positions every hour so none of them could learn his habits. He secretly built a small hidden room behind the walls of his bedroom. He stored water, food, and bedding inside. Sometimes, he slept in that hidden chamber rather than his own bed. The emperor who controlled millions of people was terrified of his own palace. And the more he isolated himself, the more dangerous he became. Fear is a strange thing. In someone with power, it becomes deadly. And this emperor's fear soon spilled out of the palace and into the city. Rome began to change. He announced that certain senators were plotting to kill him. He had no proof, but he executed them anyway. He accused poets of hiding secret messages in their verses. Many were jailed. He claimed the generals wanted to replace him. One was sent to the front lines and killed in battle. The other was forced to commit suicide. People began disappearing. Not in large numbers, but consistently, a few every week. Sometimes nobles, sometimes servants, sometimes guards. Anyone who moved too quickly. Anyone who whispered in the wrong hallway. Anyone whose face he felt too curious. His advisors tried to reason with him. They told him fear was clouding his judgment. They told him Rome needed stability, not suspicion. He didn't listen. One night, he summoned the Praetorian Guard commander. When the man arrived, the emperor was shaking. He said he heard voices outside his bedroom door. He said someone had been trying to enter. The commander assured him the palace was secure. That wasn't enough. He dismissed the entire Praetorian Guard. This shocked Rome. No emperor had ever done that. The Praetorians were the emperor's shield. They protected the city. They enforced order. They were the backbone of imperial security. Replacing them was unthinkable, but he did it anyway. He hired a new force of young, untrained men. He believed the Praetorians had been alive too long, had seen too much, had learned too many ways to betray him. The Senate panicked. Rome felt exposed. His new guards were loyal, but inexperienced, and his paranoia was growing without limits. Then came the prophecy. A traveling priest from the east arrived in Rome. He claimed he could read omens. The emperor asked him privately what he saw in the future. The priest told him, your double will rise. Your shadow will fall. This shattered what little stability the emperor had left. That night he broke down. He screamed at mirrors he imagined still existed. He slashed at shadows. He stabbed the air in front of him. He shouted that someone was standing right behind his shoulder. The palace guards refused to enter. Some said they heard him crying. Others said they heard him laughing. The truth may be somewhere in between. The next morning he ordered a purge. He accused dozens of people of being connected to the other one. He claimed they were hiding his double, helping him prepare to overthrow him. He ordered the execution of several nobles, 2 advisors, and a handful of guards. The people of Rome whispered that the emperor had lost his mind, but whispering was dangerous. Even silence felt risky. The end came quietly. The emperor had isolated himself completely. He slept in his hidden chamber most nights. He refused to eat food unless he prepared it himself. He didn't trust doctors, senators, or generals. On his final night, he heard footsteps again. He panicked. He grabbed his dagger. He ran through the palace, convinced that the prophecy was coming true, convinced that the other one had finally arrived. He burst into a large hall, breathing hard. He shouted into the darkness for the person he believed was hunting him. A small group of guards came running, not to kill him, but to help. He mistook them for assassins. He lunged. They restrained him. In the struggle, he fell against a marble column. His head struck the stone. He collapsed. For a moment, everything was silent. Some say he died instantly. Some say he whispered something before the end. One guard claimed the emperor said, I finally found him. Another claimed he said, the shadow is gone. The truth is lost. He died before sunrise. The Senate scrambled to restore order. They declared that the emperor had died from a fall. They downplayed the paranoia. They sealed many of the palace records. They buried him quietly. Historians later pieced together fragments of letters, notes from court physicians, testimonies of servants and guards. The picture they formed was disturbing. Rome had been ruled by a man who lived in constant fear of imaginary enemies. A man haunted by childhood trauma and pressure. A man pushed past his limits by stress, loneliness, and absolute power. Some historians believe he suffered from severe anxiety, hallucinations, or untreated mental illness. Others think he grew paranoid after years of living in a political environment where betrayal was common. Many emperors were assassinated. Many were betrayed by those closest to them. Maybe he wasn't imagining danger. Maybe Rome itself had made him this way. But the darkest idea is the simplest. Maybe the boy who feared the dark never disappeared. Maybe he grew into a man with an empire at his feet, still looking over his shoulder. He ruled millions, controlled armies, and carried the title of emperor. But in the end, he was no different from the frightened child hiding from shadows in a palace hallway. Fear shaped him, consumed him, and ultimately destroyed him. Another piece of our tortured past. More soon.